Hello, friends, and welcome to this Thrive Today webinar, Rhythms of Growth. My name is Christy Harang. I'm the Director of Operations for Thrive Today, and I will also be your host for our time together. And on behalf of the entire Thrive Today team, we are just so happy to have you with us for this time, whether you're live or you're watching this on recording. So we are also going to be joined by Chris and Jen Corsi. They are our co-founders of Thrive Today. Chris is our president. He's an author of several books, including The Joy Switch and the 4 Habits series, which he wrote with Dr. Marcus Warner. And Jen is our executive director. She's also the creator of Thriving Mamas, where we have a blog to help moms and support them in spreading relational skills to their families. So Chris and Jen, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Hello, thank you, Christy. Friends, we're glad you're here. We're really excited about our time together today.
Yes, we're thankful to be with you.
Thanks, Chris and Jen. So, if you happen to be new to Thrive Today, we are a nonprofit Christian ministry that focuses on teaching and training people in essential skills that our brains need to live full lives in Christ and to have healthy relationships. And these skills, they help us to grow in our character, to grow in how we interact with other people, and our ability to navigate what we feel and to deepen our connection with Jesus. And if you were watching this webinar, you probably have a value in growth or you care about growth. Maybe you want to grow in having more joy in your life or having stronger relationships. Maybe you want to learn to live and love more like Jesus does. But so often, what can happen is we want to grow, but we can't always see the way forward. Or sometimes we feel like we're doing the right things, but we're not seeing the changes that we want to see. And so this webinar was put together to offer insight that can help us on this journey. So today we're looking at 3 essential components for growth so that we can see tangible, actual experiential growth in our lives. And these aren't the only components to growth, but they're important and they can often be overlooked. So what we're going to do is Chris is going to introduce us to these 3 components, and then we're going to take a look at why they're important for the growth process, how they relate to the relational skills, and how we can develop in these different areas. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at signs that help us to recognize when we might need any one of these essentials at a given time in our lives. And the goal is really to help us to be more aware of what we need in our own growth journeys and to be more empowered along the way. So with that, Chris, we'll have you start in sharing the different components of growth.
Yeah, let's talk about these 3 essentials as we call them. We've got capacity, recovery, and healing. So capacity refers to how much weight I can carry. How much can I handle in life right now while still staying my relational self? This is my best true self. So capacity helps me to live in joy and peace and to hold on to the good stuff, even while I'm navigating the ups and downs of life. So that's capacity. The next essential is recovery. So recovery involves learning how to recover my joy and my peace anytime I lose it or when things go wrong, like technology challenges that we're having today.
That, yes.
Right? How do I get my joy and my peace back? Right? So this is when we have our upsets and our difficult circumstances and emotions. And so learning to recover helps us bounce back more quickly anytime we get knocked off balance by overwhelm, by strong emotions, even by relational challenges. So recovery is getting that joy and that peace back anytime I lose it. Then we have healing, which is the 3rd essential. And healing involves mending, healing, restoring, processing past unresolved pain and traumas. So these are the wounds that keep us stuck in the past, often keep us anchored in the past in some way, shape, or form. So healing is all about moving forward, healing, mending those wounds so that I can move forward in my journey toward growth and wholeness. So the key here is that we need each one of these ingredients, and there's a time where I might not be moving forward because one of these ingredients just needs a little more attention. So you want to start with capacity?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about capacity. So it's interesting, like Chris said, capacity is talks about how much weight can I carry? How much can I handle in life and still be myself? Capacity can help me live with that joy and the peace, even when navigating the minor ups and downs in life. And when we're talking about growth, capacity is what enables me to show up as the best version of myself. It forms the foundation of that Christ-like character that I'm aiming for, and it helps me to live with joy and peace as my home base in life. And one of the ways we can know if we kind of have a home base of joy and peace is when we get knocked out of it, we say, "Oh, look, this isn't how I normally feel. Now I need to get back to that joy and peace." So we when we get stuck in pain and challenges, we know that we're trying to get back to that home base of joy and peace. So without capacity, we will struggle to be the people that God has created us to be, even during the good times. We'll struggle to be joyful, relational, people who carry God's peace. But with capacity, we can have a foundation of joy and peace that can mark our lives. And it also provides the foundation of strength that we need to face difficult situations in the present, so that we can recover, as well as the pain of the past, which we're talking about healing. So we're going to talk about a little bit capacity, recovery, healing. What is each's role? How do they interact? And how do we know what's needed in this moment in our growth journey? Because they all interweave. We need all of them, but what do we need to focus on right now? How do we build capacity, and what are some of the ways that we at Thrive can help with people building capacity? We can build our capacity by strengthening skills. Relational skills are a big part of what Thrive Today focuses on, is the practice and development and just strengthening of relational skills. These skills can help develop rhythms of joy and peace in our lives. And like we said, these are capacity building skills. If you've been around Thrive very long, you've probably heard us talk about the foundational 5 skills. Specifically, these foundational 5 skills help provide the basic fuel or nourishment we need to be healthy, whole relational people. So we'll just look at those real quickly, just to list them, because you may not be familiar with them. But if you have no awareness of them, I'm not going to give you enough information that it solves all of the questions in your head. So towards the end, we'll give you some places that you can learn more about these different ones. Chris, actually, do you want to share about what each of those
Sure.
are?
Yeah, so the foundational 5 skills that build capacity. One is what we'd call skill 0, which is your brain's relational circuits, or what we call the joy switch. And the relational circuits really train us to be more aware of our relational state and how we're showing up in the moment. So this helps us even recognize our effect on other people. And I'm in my relational sweet spot with this skill, as I like to call it. And then we have what we call skill 1, shared joy. And sharing joy is this glad to be togetherness that helps us grow the good stuff. How do I grow more glad to be togetherness in my life with my family, friends, community members, even with the living God? And then there's what we call skill 2, which is simple quiet. We take that nice pause, that breather. This is the on-demand release of serotonin, where we learn to calm ourselves as needed. You notice when you need that breather and you can pause and be refreshed. And then skill 4 is what we call creating appreciation. This is when we remember times of joy. We remember the good stuff. We savor it. And what create appreciation does is it really trains our brain to focus on the good stuff in life. So it actually trains your brain to scan the environment for the good stuff. As you remember the good stuff, you feel the good stuff, and you share the good stuff. And then we have what we call skill 13, which is seeing what God sees, or God's sight. And what this skill does is it helps us learn to connect with Jesus and to see life and circumstances and even the people around us through God's eyes. So we say, Lord, what do you see when you look at this problem? What do you want me to know about my circumstances or my needs or my hurts? So it's just living with an awareness of God's interactive presence.
Yeah, so by strengthening these basic skills, we notice a greater steadiness in our day-to-day life, which affects our enjoyment of life and relationships, and will just be able to become more solid and healthy people in our relationships. Chris, you have an example that we're going to kind of draw throughout this as in relating to
Yeah.
capacity recovery and healing. Why don't you share with us?
Yeah, so one time Jen and the boys and I were on the beach in Lake Michigan, and I ran into a friend who was paddleboarding. And I was interacting with my friend and said, "Hey Chris, why don't you try paddleboarding? Have you ever done this before?" I said, "Never." And he said, "Well, let's try it. Get on the paddleboard and let's have some fun here." So I was in the water of Lake Michigan, and I'm trying to get on this paddleboard and keep my balance so that I don't fall into the water. So, in a sense, capacity is our ability to stay upright in life and relationships. So, it's my ability to stay on this paddleboard, so to speak, and not fall off.
So, if you've been around for a while, you've probably heard us talk about capacity and the foundational 5 skills before. But the reason why we're hitting this today is because now we want to distinguish capacity and the skills that help us build capacity from other needs and skills in our journey. So Chris is actually going to talk to us about our second growth essential, which is recovery. You want to talk to us about recovery here?
Yeah, so recovery really focuses on finding that joy in our peace again, as I mentioned earlier. Anytime I lose my joy and my peace, my brain learns how to bounce back from unpleasant emotions. So this is what lets us quicken or shorten the amount of time we stay stuck in our anger or our hopeless despair or our disgust or whatever it might be. So recovery is really helping me to get the good stuff back even though I'm navigating the turbulence of life and relationships, strong emotions.
And technology issues.
And technology issues, yes. Can we bounce back when our technology is giving us problems today? So, this is actually an important part of growing and becoming the best version of ourselves. Because what recovery really focuses on is it's helping me be the person that God created me to be, even though things are going wrong, life is hard, and difficult stuff is happening to me in a variety of ways. So, what I'm doing is in a sense, I'm learning to drive during good conditions, using another analogy here. My son's been learning to drive for the past number of months, and so he's learning, how do I drive when the sun is shining and it's light outside and there's no traffic, where that would be like capacity building. But learning to drive in difficult conditions such as nighttime and traffic jams and
Snow and ice.
snow and ice, all of that good stuff. This is part of the recovery process. So I'm getting really good at navigating difficulties so that I can get my joy and my peace back. So anytime life gets hard, capacity can only hold what I can manage in that moment. And so recovery is being able to get the joy and the peace back. And without our ability to recover, what happens is there's a ceiling on my growth journey because I won't be able to handle situations that stretch and strain us. So I'm able to be myself when it's a good day and things are going well. But the question is, can I return to me when all these things, the turbulence and the storms, are coming my way? Am I able to get back to my relational, joy-filled self? Speaking of getting back, I would like to say hi to Christy. We see you've joined us here, Christy. Glad
Yes, we have had so many technical difficulties with this webinar, so we'll see if I stay here or not. But
Well, hopefully, at least you or us will
Yes.
stay on and we can
yes,
carry on so long as there's somebody on here that can share.
Yes.
exactly. It'll be a fun recording to watch too.
Yes. Well, so we're getting our practice today, friends, on growing and recovering and getting our joy and our peace back.
Yes,
But the beautiful
absolutely.
thing about recovery is it also strengthens us to continue growing more capacity, and it sets us up for greater success in our healing journeys. And so that's what's really important here between capacity and recovery. They're really connected in that way. Capacity helps me learn recovery, and we need both. So, how do I strengthen my recovery skills, and how would that work if I notice every time I get angry or I get sad or I get hopeless, I just completely lose myself and the bottom falls out and I lose my footing? And really, how does Thrive Today help with this? Because this is really the thing that we're passionate about in helping people learn and strengthen these skills. So recovery skills are what help me restore peace and joy anytime I lose them. And everyone's capacity has what's called a window of tolerance that Dr. Daniel Siegel often talks about. A window of tolerance is how much resistance in life can I handle while staying my relational self? So when the winds of adversity are coming against me, how well can I stay myself or get back to my joyful self? So growing capacity is really what helps to expand our window of tolerance. But recovery skills come into play when we get pushed out of the bounds of our window of tolerance. And this is where I have to learn how to return to myself and get my joy and my peace back. That's why we call it recovery or return to joy, because I'm getting it back anytime I lose it. So it helps to see that, recovery really plays an important role here in those moments where we're pushed outside of the bounds of what we can manage and to get back to our glad to be together selves again. And so an example might be where I feel upset because someone at work was rude to me and I've lost my peace and my joy. They said something that was really hurtful and I'm fuming, right? I'm focused on how could they say that? I can't believe this person said that and all the nice things I've done for them. And this is how they treat me. So recovery means that I can return and bounce back to joy and peace while staying my relational, peaceful self. And so while I might still be simmering and I'm still feeling hurt by what this coworker said, now I have some peace and some joy again because I've returned to relationship. I've returned to relational mode. And now this is going to help me be able to navigate the situation with my coworker so I can get some repair and get some reconnection again, as much as that person allows. As Paul says, live at peace with others as much as you're able to, basically, right? So returning to joy is really the key recovery skill that we're highlighting here. And this is something that we've been very excited about at Thrive Today, creating a lot of resources this past year to really help people strengthen their return to joy skills. Because this is the practice that our brain needs, these pathways to get back from unpleasant emotions. So the good news is we can train our brain to learn these particular skills. But there are a number of recovery skills that can help us navigate times when we or others have lost their peace and joy. And we go into a lot of those skills at Thrive trainings, but we just wanted to really highlight the return to joy skill today. That's one of the big ones. And I like my example of the paddleboard, right? Where my friends, encouraging me to go paddleboarding. I get up on that paddleboard and I think I have my balance. The waves are coming in. It's not a pretty sight, but I'm trying to keep my balance. Recovery comes in when I've fallen into the water. I've taken a plunge. I've gotten wet. And now I have to learn how to get back on that paddleboard again. So these conditions, it really involves me learning to return to my relational, peaceful state of homeostasis. And that's what we're talking about with recovery, getting on that paddleboard anytime we fall off. And we do fall off sometimes.
Awesome. Well, so even though I was gone for the first part of it, we talked about capacity, which really helps us to show up as our best selves in the day to day. And then Chris just talked about recovery, which helps us to stay our best selves or quickly find our best selves when life gets difficult, we get thrown off balance. So, Jen, why don't you talk to us about this component of healing?
Yeah, so healing involves mending from past unresolved pain and trauma. So unhealed wounds can keep us stuck in the past and keep us from moving forward in our journeys towards growth and wholeness. So how is healing different from recovery? Recovery deals more with recovering in the present moment versus healing that deals more with unprocessed pain from the past that's been activated or triggered from the past. Recovery restores my peace and joy in the present, while healing unlocks the chains of bondage from the past. So, for example, we've been dealing with an issue with one of our sons, and he lied to me about something. And I have had to recover from the emotions of him lying about something. I had some anger, those kind of things. So, but it went beyond that. I noticed I wasn't fully recovering and noticed, oh, there's some pain from my past, pain when I've been lied to before, that's creeping in here and making it very hard for me to recover and return to joy from my upset here. And so that's those moments where my recovery process is being hindered. That's telling me there's something more going on from the past that needs healing. I need peace in that place in the past that's sneaking into the present right now. And that's kind of what we're talking about with healing here. So, why is healing important for growth? Well, when we have places of unresolved pain and trauma, part of us remains stuck in those places, unable to move forward and grow. And while we need capacity and recovery skills to face the past pain, we actually have to build those skills up too in order to be able to heal and sustain healing. Addressing healing will also free us up to continue to grow more in our capacity and our recovery skills. So they're all intertwined. Making inroads in one area makes inroads in another area too. So with the paddleboard analogy, Chris was talking about capacity staying upright on the paddleboard, being able to keep your balance. Recovery is getting back on the paddleboard when you've fallen in the water. And healing involves addressing the wounds that keep me from recovering. So if I have well, actually, you want to, if you with your back, right? You
Yeah.
have back injuries, so it would be harder for you to get back up on that paddleboard because of that pain.
That's right. Yeah, it would. It might be hard for me to bend my body a certain way to get on this thing, and might be very painful because there's an injury that needs to be addressed. That's making it hard for me both to recover to get on the board, much less be able to stand upright. So that injury is hindering me from being able to stay my relational self and bounce back to joy from upsetting emotions.
So how do we heal? At Thrive Today, we teach people relational skills. We practice and strengthen relational skills. We don't specifically provide one-on-one healing sessions, that type of a thing, but the relational skills that we teach and train help heavily influence and help people in the healing process. So we need a good base of capacity and recovery to draw on for healing, because we can get stuck in our healing if we don't have enough capacity or enough recovery skills. We building those things up can help us be ready to do the healing piece. At the same time, sometimes our need for healing can drain our capacity. So when there's some kind of unprocessed pain from my past creeping into my present, it sucks my joy and my peace in the present. Even if I have built up capacity, it can drag that capacity down. And sometimes we can't recover from pain in the present because of pain that it taps into from the past, like my example. So they are all kind of intertwined. And, things go wrong in the world and in our communities, in our families, and we all have suffered hardship and pain where we lacked the capacity and recovery skills to handle the situation. So healing is the purposeful removing of the thorns that have built up from those times in the past that hinder us from being our peaceful, joyful, relational selves with flexibility, creativity, and the expression of our true hearts the way that God designed us to be. So as far as relational skills go, healing draws on our capacity building skills and our recovery skills, plus additional skills that we're not going to go into today. But we process unresolved pain at different levels in the brain. And that's all I'll say about that for now, because that's a little too complex for what we're going into today, but they're all intertwined.
Awesome. All right. Well, that just hopefully is giving you guys an of capacity, recovery, and healing. And hopefully we just get a sense that these are all things that we need in this growth journey. Now, growth isn't just linear. It's not like, okay, I built my capacity, check, done. No, I built my recovery, check, done. Now I can do healing. As Jen talked about, these are interwoven, and there's like a rhythm of how we grow and the seasons in our lives. And so what we want to talk about now is just being able to look at how do we recognize what season we're in. Part of our growth journey involves being able to identify what God's doing in my life and when it's time to build some more capacity, when it's time to work on recovery skills, when it's time to pursue healing. So we're going to be looking at, how do I know? What are some tips or some signs? So we're going to start with capacity. What are signs that I need to build capacity in my life? And I want to first acknowledge that I think sometimes some of you maybe like haven't thought of building capacity as an essential for growing. Or sometimes we think, well, I want to do the hard work. I want to work in get my healing. I want to, learn how to process my emotions. And it feels like I'm not really doing much if I'm just building capacity. But I want to remind you, as we've been saying, that the greater capacity we have, the more successful we're going to be in being able to work on our healing and sustaining our healing, being able to learn recovery skills. So this is really worthwhile. So some signs that we need more capacity or that we should work on growing capacity. One would be that we go into what we call enemy mode very often. So this could look like, if you're not familiar with enemy mode, this could look like I'm really fixated more on problems than the people in my life, that I struggle with even wanting to connect with people in my life that I love. Um, really feeling like maybe judgy or more aggressive in my interactions. We might notice low joy levels. We might notice that we really struggle with calming ourselves, or that we just tend to see the glass as half empty most of the time and struggle with seeing the good things in life. We struggle with connecting with Jesus. These are all signs that we could use more capacity. We might struggle to hold on to joy and peace in our day-to-day. Life might feel kind of like a roller coaster, even when circumstances aren't crazy. And we might not even know, you might think joy and peace is my home base. Like, what is that? I'm not even sure what that looks like. I'm not even sure what that feels like. That could be a sign we need capacity. Another thing I'm going to throw in there is also if you've been pursuing healing or working on emotions and you feel like maybe you're spinning your wheels, you're not seeing sustaining growth, or it's hard to make any progress, that could also be a sign that you just need some more basic capacity to uphold you before you dig into those things. And Jen, you have a good example of this, or just capacity.
Yeah. So when we were getting ready to move to Michigan from Illinois, lots of things happened all at once. We were packing the house. Chris got pneumonia. He traveled to South Korea. There was a lot, and we had a kindergartner and first grader. So they were in the like needing us, not helping us, season of parenting. So I pushed past my capacity on a regular basis as we were trying to get our house, get out of our house, get out of the state, and get to our new place. And when we got on the other side of that, I noticed how depleted my capacity was. I noticed how snappy I was, how short, how every little thing overwhelmed me. I just really noticed that, I had a home base of joy and peace, but it had been missing for a little while. I had pushed through for so long that I kind of lost my home base and it took me a while to find my way back to that home base, taking moments of quiet, taking moments of joy. I was trying to find appreciation. I couldn't even feel appreciation because I was so far off of my home base in that season. I needed to slowly rebuild that home base. And then I had that home base and could notice when I was falling out of it, whereas I was almost continually out of it in that season because I had just not taken the space to respect capacity.
Yeah, and this actually is really helpful lens. And this leads us right to how do I know when it's time to build recovery skills, right? So that covers some of the capacity needs. Now, how do I know when I need to strengthen and grow some recovery skills? And so one of the things we'll start to notice in ourselves is we struggle to remain our best, most relational selves with certain emotions. And so anytime I hit, maybe it's some shame, I just completely lose myself. I get stuck. It just overrides anything and everything that's going on in my life. This would be a sign that I need to strengthen some of my return to joy skills for specific emotions. Or if we generally experience God's joy and God's peace, but we find ourselves struggling to bounce back from specific emotions or even types of situations, then it's likely time to work on some of my recovery skills. And so it's really helpful to have this lens that the inability to find God in the hard stuff of life, where difficult emotions arise, is often a sign that my recovery skills are needed. And so this is a little different than some of the capacity signs that Jen was talking about. So you also might find yourself overly dismissive of emotions of other people, or maybe you feel emotions too intensely when someone else has some emotions. So these might be signs that, you know what? It's really hard to stay me or return to me under these specific conditions. And there tends to be some emotions that are just harder for us than other ones. And so this reminds me of a time in my life where Jen and I were newlyweds, or getting just accustomed to being married and all the changes and fluctuations and that adventure. And going into this, I could connect with God fairly smoothly in the joyful, peaceful places of my life. But I noticed when Jen and I had something we needed to talk about or something we needed to work through, um, anytime I felt shame or maybe some tension in the relationship at some level, I found myself retreating rather than engaging Jen. And normally I would engage my wife and like, really, let's connect here and let's have some time together. But this was like, I'm avoiding it. I'm not able to engage. I'm feeling some shame or I'm feeling some kind of upset here. I noticed that this was just different than who I normally am. And so I was avoiding a problem or some tension. And it was difficult for me to connect with Jesus when I felt some shame or maybe when I felt hurt or mad about something. I knew Jesus was there. I had enough experience of connecting with Jesus in the good places to know I got a really good connection. But boy, when those particular emotions would arise, it was really hard for me to connect with Jesus. So I needed to work on strengthening my return to joy skills so that I could better stay connected with my wife, as well as find Jesus in some of those moments where I lost my peace and my joy. So growing in my recovery skills actually made it easier for me to connect with Jesus in those pockets of shame or those moments where I felt upset. And so here's where we may bump into the need for healing, because sometimes we're working on our recovery skills, but we're not getting back to joy and peace. It seems like there's something that's making it hard for me to bounce back to joy and peace. And this is where we run into unprocessed pain, what I like to think of as a landmine. We step on these landmines and we notice, wow, what I normally can do isn't working right now. I'm getting stuck, and there must be something here that's making it hard for me to get through this. And that's when we know it's probably time for some healing to process some pain.
Yeah, so back to healing. Um, when is it time? How do we know when it's time to pursue healing? Well, when God is bringing past issues and pain to mind. So we don't need to go looking for problems. Um, Plenty of them pop up on their own. But we try to be aware of when God is opening the door to work through things. So examples would be strong, often non-relational reactions that keep cropping up, especially around a certain topic or certain people that just don't go away. That's a good sign that there might be some kind of unprocessed pain from the past creeping into the present that needs some healing. Or if fear and rigidity that will shut me down or amp me up, those are some signs that there might be more going on in the present that's sneaking in from the past, and healing is needed. Or an inability to stay relational with my brain's relational circuits running. So I can't stay relational. I can't stay in my sweet spot. I keep falling out of it. That's a good sign that maybe some healing is needed. Something from the past is impacting my present. Um, if you're experiencing consistent pain that you can't quite identify, whether that sometimes I notice like I'm feeling weepy or I'm feeling cravings, like I just want something. And that usually is a sign that there's some pain from the past sneaking into my present. If you feel like you have the bandwidth to look at hard things without falling apart or shutting down, that's good. That means there's curiosity accompanying these moments where I have grown enough capacity to start questioning my reactions. So there's a growing awareness that I have something deeper going on. For me, as I have worked on my capacity and my recovery skills, I've noticed it's so much easier to notice, wow, why am I not recovering right now? Why is my capacity drained? Something more must be going on. And then I go to the Lord and say, Lord, what do you want me to be aware of that's happening right now? As I have built that foundation of home base of joy and peace and those recovery skills, I notice something's different here that's keeping me from my normal. What's going on? If I'm having an inability to connect with God, where I used to be able to find Jesus in my life and restore my peace, and I can't right now, that might mean some healing is needed. If I'm finding myself unable to return to joy from emotions that I used to be able to manage, that's a good sign that something else is going on and I might need some healing. Christy, I know you have a story as an example of when you knew you needed some healing in your own life. Do you want to share?
Yeah, and I just want to also say that as we're talking about signs, I notice some of these signs could point to recovery or healing, and that's why part of also the journey is recognizing basic signs, but also navigating with Jesus and
Yes.
him helping us discern what we need, because sometimes we're like, oh, this could point to a need for recovery, it could point to this, and we really need to feel that through with Jesus. And so this happened to me, that I was in a season where I knew I needed healing. I was aware that there were areas where I needed it, and I was knocking on doors because I wanted to get healing, and the doors weren't opening, and I not the right timing. And a couple years later, life got really hard. I was struggling with functioning as well. And it was at this time I was like, okay, I actually do need to pursue to somebody. And God opened the door. He opened the door for me to start meeting with a therapist. And when we started looking at the areas of my life, I realized, oh my goodness, this goes a lot deeper than I realized. Like, this is really heavy. I knew it was heavy, but it's even heavier. And what became clear to me was that God wasn't opening the door before, because I needed extra doses of capacity and recovery skills to actually face some of the things that he was bringing to light. And had I shoved the door open sooner, what would have happened is I would have either not been able to fully face it, or it could have taken. And so God was actually strength. So a big thing for me was recognizing, okay, I actually have the strength now to face this. And those capacity and recovery skills really helped undergird me so that I could start actually facing it. And I was sensitive to, is the door opening? Is God saying this is the time? Or is God saying, you know what, this just isn't the time, and I need to trust that he's doing something else to get me ready for it. So I want to, we're going to talk about, what do we do? What are some next steps with all of this? And first of all, I want to encourage you guys, you can put in the chat, like, as we're talking, are you noticing, like, oh, yeah, I think I might need to work on some recovery skills, or I think I might be noticing the need to build capacity. If you're noticing anything as we're talking, please feel free to share that in the chat with us. But I do want to encourage you to take some time with Jesus to reflect on where you are in your growth journey and what you need in this season. You might go back and rewatch this webinar and just kind of go back through it and notice what Jesus is bringing to mind. But I'm also going to share some resources that we have with you if you want options to work on any of these areas. Now, we focus on the recovery and the capacity building piece, so I'm going to share on the healing piece last. But I'm just going to pull these up. And I also want to mention that if you're not sure what you need, capacity is always a really great place to start. So let me just pull this up. I want to start by looking at categories. So we're going to look at self-paced options. So if you're like, I would love to do something on my own at my own pace, we have some options for building capacity, and that is with building our foundational 5 skills. So we have an intro course. Chris's Joy Switch book is also great. The intro course has assessments. You can see your strength and the different foundational 5 skills. It's going to teach you exercises that you can start to practice so you can build your capacity. Even if you've been around for a while, this is a really great place to build capacity. And don't worry about the links. We'll send you an email with the links, or if you're watching this on recording, wherever this is housed, there'll be links listed in the description. If you're wanting to work on strengthening recovery, you can practice our return to joy skill. At our skill 11 skill page, we have a pathway for developing this skill. And there's an awesome course we have on navigating emotions. We have another course that's about to come out, and these are incredibly helpful just with being able to continue to build recovery skills. So then we've got online growth opportunities. So if you go to thrivetoday.org/upcoming events, whether you're watching this like now in the present time or later, we'll always have listed what options we have for learning with us online, we have a practice class coming up on finding peace in transitions. And this class is great because it's going to cover an exercise on building capacity, and it's going to cover an exercise on building recovery. So you get a little bit of taste of both of them. And then in the fall, we're going to have 2 habit builder groups, one that will focus on simple quiet, which is a capacity building skill, and one that focuses on return to joy, which is a recovery skill. So at the time of this recording, next week is when those groups should be up and available to register. So you can go back to that if you want to check those out. And also keep an eye out for our emails because we'll be sending out communications about it. And then there's in-person training. If you really want to dive in and be in a community of people who are pursuing these things together, our Thrive Premier training is amazing for this. Track 1, you take track 1 and then you take track 2, and track 1 focuses on building capacity. And then track 2 dives into recovering from unpleasant emotions and building these recovery skills. So we have an info night if you want to learn more about it. There'll be a link that will send you in an email or in the description of this video where you can register. And that'll give you a chance to learn more about our Thrive Premier training. And if you're looking for healing, we have partner ministries and people that have been through Thrive training that help provide one-on-one healing ministry. So you can email us at info@thrivetoday.org, and we have a referral list that we can send you if you are looking for some opportunities to receive some prayer ministry or some one-on-one help. And of course, if you need any help, if you're not quite sure what you're looking for, email us at info@thrivetoday.org, or you can always just check out our website at thrivetoday.org. So, anything, Chris and Jen, you want to throw in before we wrap up our time together?
Yeah, I want to give everyone encouragement. Like, we're all a work in progress. We haven't arrived. And I can remember just feeling like something was needed to help me grow in my walk with the Lord and my relationships and so forth. But I was like, I don't even know what I need. But I knew I needed something. I could feel it strongly. So I just want to encourage, everyone that this provides a lens for some possible next steps. And the good news is these are all within reach: growing capacity, strengthening recovery skills, healing. All of these things are attainable. It just takes a little time, a little practice. And so I just hope that everyone feels that bit of encouragement that, yeah, this is possible. This is within reach.
Awesome. I want to have Jen share any last words, but I want to say a couple of things because we have a couple quick questions we can answer pretty easily. The first thing is, well, first of all, I do want to mention in regard to the resources that I mentioned, that can be overwhelming because I listed a lot. So that's why I really encourage you to think about trying to discern with Jesus, where do I want to grow, recovery capacity, and what is the best way for me right now? Is it a self-paced? Is it with a group online? Is it doing something in person? So just thinking about what your needs are, that will hopefully help you drive down to maybe one thing that would be a good next step for you. And we have a question about, can we keep others from growing by trying to solve things for them? And I think that definitely can happen at times when we're trying to be overly helpful. We can actually get in the way of their process. But is there anything you want to add on that, Chris or Jen?
Yes, as a parent who has done that for her kids, I can attest that you can be too helpful. Um, and it was interesting. I heard Jim Wilder share that one of the things as we mature, we have to learn how to protect other people from ourselves. And I've always thought that meant protect other people from the parts of me that aren't acting like Jesus yet. But he actually said we also have to protect other people from the good in ourselves, because we can overwhelm people with the good by doing too much for them. And as well as other scenarios. But yes, we can stunt their growth by solving things for them.
Yeah, it's like it's like the caterpillar in the cocoon who needs to kind of actually have
Struggle.
resistance and the struggle to be strong enough to fly once it gets out. And I think, yeah, sometimes we're like, I don't want you to struggle. I don't want you to have a hard time. But it's that struggle and that battle that often really helps us work through things and find our way forward. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where just looking at my fear, what's driving me, or Jesus, what do you see that you want me to know about this? And getting that piece can really help us to be able to create a little space for them to learn what it is they need to discover going through that.
Yes. So I just want to encourage you. This has been a 20+ year journey for us, for me personally. And when I started, I needed all of them, and I needed a lot of all of them. And God has been faithful to help me find the pieces to plug into for right now. So if you walking away from this going, oh, I need all of those things, just pace yourself. It's a lifelong journey of growth. Growth isn't something you're supposed to arrive at tomorrow. It's just what's for this season.
Mhm.
Awesome. Wonderful. There's one last question as far as relational skills to work on in marriage. We have a great book, 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriage, and that has practices and it has 4 different things you can focus on to strengthen your marriage, and exercises related to those that Chris developed. So I'd highly recommend you check that out. If you go to thrivetoday.org/our works, you'll see the 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriages book. So with that, Chris and Jen, thank you so much for being here and for taking over since my internet decided to die today.
Oh, thank you, Christy.
Yes.
I hope this is encouraging for folks, and just pray that God will, guide your every step, friends.
Yeah. Yeah, we thank you so much for being with us,
Mm.
even amidst the technical difficulties. It's been a joy to have you here and continue to keep in touch with us if
Mhm.
there's any ways we can serve you on your journey. We hope you guys have a great day.
Yes.
Bye.